Rodgers gets the snap. Blitz is on. Rodgers scrambles left, winds up rainbow.
Cobb.
He's got Cobb at the 10 to the 5
Yes!
to the end zone. Touchdown and a dagger. Oh my goodness! An NFC North Division Championship dagger.
What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to Real Packers Talk, the podcast dedicated to everything green and gold. I am your host, Ethan Peltier. You can find me on Instagram or Twitter at Real Packers Talk. And I'm back at it again today to recap the recent Packers victory in the preseason against the Cincinnati Bengals. I've been very much looking forward to recapping this, and I actually was able to attend the game myself, so I have some thoughts. So let's just jump right into it. First of all, I just want to say that I am so excited and happy that football is back, albeit with the caveat of it being preseason. It doesn't matter to me. I love football so much, and I'm so happy that, we're watching NFL football once again. I do want to say that as someone who went to the game myself and was able to attend in person, it was a great atmosphere. There were a ton of folk that showed up, a lot of Bengals fans, obviously, but there were also a lot of Packers fans, which I'll get into in a little bit. But I want to reiterate that I had so much fun. It was an absolute blast. I don't care if it's preseason. Football is football to me. So with that, I also do want to let you know, as I mentioned in the follow-up video, or I guess the preview video, I guess is what you would call it, I made a statement, or I basically said that, hey, let's not overreact regardless of what happens. Let's not overreact to training camp. Let's not overreact to any preseason games, regardless of how good or bad certain things might look. It's only preseason, and there is still time to correct things if they aren't fixed. Or on the other hand, there's no reason to freak out or lose our minds or assume that we have, Hall of Fame talented roster. We might, but we might not. So I don't want to jump the gun too much. I just want to break down what I saw, and then from there we'll keep an eye on these things and see how they kind of progress and evolve as the season goes on. First and foremost, I know that everyone is going to ask, how did Jordan Love do? If you haven't watched the game, or you haven't watched the highlights, or have been living under a rock for the last couple of days, you probably don't know that Jordan Love actually had a pretty decent performance. He ended up going 7 for 10, throwing for 46 yards and 1 touchdown. And keep in mind that he only did this on 2 drives. And, in reality, besides one, he threw 3 incomplete passes. Of those 3 incomplete passes, 1 was knocked down by a defensive lineman, which was a great play. Another was a long shot to Christian Watson, which, yes, you could argue the ball could have been thrown maybe slightly better, and I know that this is something that Matt LaFleur and Jordan Love himself addressed in their press conferences, respectively. However, I would argue that the defense made a really good play on that throw. That wasn't necessarily a bad throw, as it was, hey, it was just really good defense, and you have to give credit to them as well because they do get paid to play the game as well. There was really, in my opinion, and I know I'm biased, but from what I saw, there was only one real miss, and that was on a crossing route on a 3rd down play where Jordan Love just let it sail right in front of Luke Musgrave, who was wide open. And again, this is something that they addressed in the press conference. Jordan knows that he needs to hit those throws. You can't miss those. But besides that, man, he played really, really well, and I was interested to see how he would perform in person. Obviously, everything that I've seen from him has been on a television screen or on YouTube, and just seeing him perform in a live setting, being there at the game, man, I want to say that he just looked really poised and confident, and I don't want to say he's ready or he's arrived and he's ready to take us to the playoffs or anything like that, but man, if he can continue to consistently put drives like that together, look out, the Packers are going to be cooking with fire. I want to stress that he definitely looks a million times more confident than he did last preseason, or if you really even want to go back all the way back until when he was drafted. One thing I think will be interesting to keep an eye on moving forward with this preseason is how much is Jordan Love going to play. Obviously, back in the Aaron Rodgers era, it didn't really make sense to play Aaron Rodgers in the preseason because, why risk him getting hurt? It's not that he really needs the extra reps, Although last year it would have been nice for him to get more reps with his young receivers, just saying, no, whatever. But I am interested to see if Jordan gets more opportunities later in the preseason. Like, I wonder if they're going to let him play like a whole quarter or something like that, as opposed to just a couple of drives, which was the expectation. I know that I said in my preview that I was kind of hoping that he would play a decent amount. It was just the 2 drives, and leading up to the game, as we got closer to it, I kind of was expecting that, so it wasn't the biggest deal in the world. But I'm just happy to see that he played really well. I did mention that he threw a touchdown, which was to Romeo Doubs. And again, coming from a biased Packers fan, but that was just a beautiful ball. I don't care who you are. I just think it was a great throw. He floated it perfectly into the only spot that Romeo could go make a catch. There was really tight coverage on it, and Romeo just made a good play and came down with the ball. And it's really nice to see the chemistry between Love and Romeo continue to develop. There's a legitimate chance that Romeo has a breakout year this year. I know Christian Watson's kind of our number 1 guy, but look out for Romeo as well. But yeah, that's just a quick, brief overview of Jordan Love's 2 drives. I could go on and on and on and on about him, but there's no point because I think he played well. And that's all, there's no reason to overreact. Let's just tie it off right there, put a pin in it, and let's move on. Because I actually do have a list of players from both offense and defense that I'd like to go over as far as who impressed me and things that I saw throughout the game. So, continuing with the offensive side of the ball, Jordan Love only played those 2 drives. From then on, it was mostly Sean Clifford. We saw Alex Magoo come in for, I think, maybe a drive or 2. Like, he came in at the tail end of the 4th quarter. And I think he even fumbled on his first passing attempt because someone hit him from the back. So, I'm not even going to talk about Magoo that much. I'm really going to focus on Sean Clifford, who the hell is this kid and where did he come from? Like, I mean, obviously I know where he came from, but Sean Clifford had quite a day. He went 20 for 26, throwing for 208 yards, a touchdown, and he did throw for 2 interceptions, one of which was returned for a pick 6. But more than anything, I want to stress that, I mean, this kid's a rookie, and he's playing in his first ever NFL level, and he showed out. And I've been seeing reports coming out from camp that, Sean Clifford has essentially become the number 2 quarterback, which I think if you would have told me that after he got drafted, I would have been really surprised. Pleasantly surprised, but surprised nonetheless. And, he had a couple of really good throws. He looked poised. Obviously, he's got a long way to go, and he is playing against, second, third, maybe even 4th stringers, guys who are fringe squad or maybe practice squad members, like guys that probably won't make the Bengals roster. So it's not like he was just tearing it up against one of the better defenses in the league. But he did perform really well. Going off of that, Emmanuel Wilson, who, if I'm being completely honest, I knew little to nothing about him before the other night. What a performance, man. He had 6 carries, 111 yards, 2 touchdowns, one of which was an 80-yard he just outran the entire defense. He made a quick cut and gone. And, I was, in the stands going, go, 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 go. And he, ran all the way. It was so much fun. Apparently there was a really, really interesting story that came out, or I was kind of figuring this out as the game went on. Apparently 14 years to the day of that preseason game, Emmanuel Wilson's father unfortunately passed away, and going into this game, again, this was also his first NFL performance. He is an undrafted rookie, and you could just tell that heavy burden on his heart only strengthened him and only made him want to play harder, and you've got to respect the kid, and you love to see that. You love to see people battle through adversity and come out on top, and I mean, who knows if he makes the roster? Definitely, I think he has secured himself a practice squad spot. Words. But we'll see if he makes the 53. I think if you would have asked me who's going to be running back number 3, I would have told you, oh, it's for sure Tyler Goodson. But I don't know anymore. If Emmanuel Wilson is able to make an impact on, say, special teams, or if he can prove that he's a better blocker than Goodson, because I know Goodson, that's part of the reason that he got cut last year is because he wasn't a good blocker. I mean, we'll see, man. I'm really excited for him, and he had a really good night, so we'll see if he can build off of that as well. And then to kind of wrap it up on the offensive side of the ball, I thought our line did decently well. You know, there were a few ugly pressures given up here and there. In fact, on the pick six that Sean Clifford threw, Sean Ryan got absolutely manhandled, and Clifford, I don't blame Clifford too much for the pick six. Yeah, it was a bad throw. It was not a great read, but he also had a 280-pound or 300-pound lineman running at him within seconds. So you got to cut him some slack. On top of that, I thought Dontavian Wicks, Samori Toure, and Malik Heath all had pretty decent days as receivers. They all had multiple catches. They all made splash plays. In fact, the one thing that I do want to talk about as far as Malik Heath, because I remember I said in my preview that I was going to keep an eye on him, he had a play where it was a design quarterback rollout where like the quarterback faked the handoff and then he immediately got out of the pocket and started running. And Malik Heath straight up blocked his guy 20 yards down the field and then to the sideline. And it was very apparent that he kind of got under this the cornerback's skin because the cornerback got flagged for unnecessary roughness after the play. So you absolutely love to see a guy who's putting 100% effort in. You can tell that he wants to be on this squad. You can tell that he's trying to make the 53-man roster, and I really hope he does. He's got that. Again, I don't know if it's because he's wearing Randall Cobb's old number and there's just some magic associated with it, but he has been impressive, to say the least. Moving over to the defensive side of the ball, in general, I want to say that our defensive front was solid. They had a couple of pressures. I mean, again, you have to keep in mind that it's second, third, fourth stringers that they're going up against. Not that our starters played all that much, but I think our defensive starters maybe played for a drive or two as well. But just in general, I thought the young defensive linemen that we've drafted and have developed over the last couple of years it's some progress is showing, which is always a good thing. To name specific names, though, one player on defense that really stood out to me, and I think stood out to a lot of other people, was 7th round pick Carrington Valentine out of Kentucky. And man, I really hope he can stay consistent with this level of play, because if that's the case, he is a diamond in the rough. He had multiple pass breakups, an interception. He was just all over the field. Every time he got tested, he was making a play. And even if he wasn't, intercepting the ball or making a play on the ball, he was right there to make the tackle. You can tell that he is not afraid of contact. And as someone who played cornerback myself back in high school, I have so much appreciation for that position. It's a really hard position, especially on the NFL level. Not that I speak from experience, but Valentine had a really nice day, and I again hope that he'll continue to build off of that, because he could be a solid player. On top of that, Dolan Levitt, one of the guys that we acquired from the Niners last year, also had an interception, which the ball got tipped up in the air, and he just happened to be in the right place at the right time. So, I'm hoping that Levitt could provide some solid depth in case either Rudy Ford or Darnell Savage don't end up playing well, or if they get hurt, knock on wood, that doesn't happen. But Levitt had a decent day as well. So, with all of that, those are all kind of like the positives. I do want to get into the negatives. I did kind of mention how some of the offensive linemen had a bit of a rough outing, and there were definitely some missed tackles, especially early on in the game on defense. I do recall a play where there was a Bengals, forgive me because I am not going to know any of their players' names, especially their backups. I don't mean any disrespect by that, but there was a play where the Bengals quarterback had all day to throw, fired a missile, not even a missile, he just kind of floated it to this guy who was wide open in the middle of the field. And then Jonathan Owens, who, arguably could be a starting safety for us at some point this year, took a really, really bad angle. And as a result of that, the Bengals picked up a pretty big chunk play. So there is that. And then, of course, you've probably already heard by now if you've been keeping up with the Packers or if you're as crazy about the Packers as I am. You'll probably know that Anders Carlson had not a terrible performance, but definitely not the performance that I think he wants. He made every field goal that he went out for, and most of them were, chip shots, especially for an NFL kicker. However, he did miss 2 PATs, and that is something that I don't want to press the panic button right now. I think it's way too early for that, and I know that everyone and their mother is talking about, the kicking situation, like, well, we need to call Mason Crosby and figure this out, right? Let's give him some time to figure it out. Obviously, that's something we'll have to keep an eye on. I wouldn't even mind if they brought in another kicker just to, bring in competition. But man, if he continues to have rough outings like that, where he's just, like, I think one thing that I've heard a bunch from camp is he'll line up for his first kick, miss it, and then make every single kick after that. Here's the thing, in the NFL, when you go out to make a kick, you get one chance. You can't miss on the first chance. So that's definitely something that he's going to have to clean up. But other than that, that's basically my positives and negatives as far as, like, specific players. I have a couple other notes here that I want to get into before I wrap this episode up, and then we'll move on with the rest of the episode. Real quick editor's note, as I'm going through this and looking back, I realized that I said that we acquired Dolan Levitt from the Niners. That is a mistake on my part. We acquired him from the Raiders. Real quick, just wanted to clear that up. Let's hop back into my actual thoughts. So to wrap up this episode, I do want to talk about the injuries that occurred in this game. I know no one ever wants to see injuries, well, really any time, but especially in the preseason. It's just, what a terrible way to start the year. And unfortunately, we do have one injury that is going to keep this particular player out for the rest of the season. And that would be Tyler Davis, a tight end who actually did catch a touchdown earlier in the game. But what's crazy is I don't even remember seeing this happen. Like, either I missed it or it didn't happen on the field because I don't recall them stopping play to, like, cart him off or anything. So I wonder if he, like I said, either I just missed it, but I wonder if he, like, tweaked something and then went to the sideline and then was like, oh, this isn't right. But yeah, he tore his ACL, which is terrible news. I wish him a speedy recovery. I hope he can get back on his feet sooner than later. And the good news is that ACL recovery, it's much different in the modern NFL than it was, say, 5-10 years ago. So hopefully he can bounce back on his feet sooner than later. I know that Corey Ballantyne also went down at some point. I don't know to what extent his injury is or how serious it is, but something to keep an eye on. And then Luke Tenuta, one of the offensive linemen, one of our backups, he did get carted off the field at some point. So, again, something to keep an eye on. You never want to see that happen, especially in preseason. So my heart goes out for these guys, and I hope that they're all able to make quick and speedy recoveries. On top of that, some of the other just notes that I wanted to talk about or things that I noticed throughout the game. Jaden Reed was returning punts throughout the game. He had three punt returns, if I'm being completely honest. It was all right. Honestly, anything but Amari Rodgers, right? Nothing can be worse than that. Like, he would fumble it or muff it every single time he touched the ball, and that just wasn't feasible any longer. I'm just happy it seems like we've got someone back there to catch punts who isn't going to just drop them. Another thing that I noticed in the earlier portion of the game when the starters for defense were still in, Keyshawn Nixon was playing in the nickel, so he was covering their slot receivers, which is something that I think he'll excel in, and I hope that they continue to use him in that role because I think that's where he'll probably be utilized the best. And then on top of that, on the other side of the ball, there's just a lot of wide receiver competition. I know earlier I, by name, mentioned a couple of the guys that had decent performances, but there are just so many young receivers who, all of them legit, like besides the obvious roster locks like Romeo Doubs and Christian Watson and even Samori Toure, outside of those three or, maybe four guys that you might be able to mention, it's completely open for grabs. And that is a good problem to have. You probably know who I'm going to be pulling for, Malik Heath. I hope that guy makes the roster. He seems like a dog. But, it's a good problem to have. I do want to reiterate that point. And then lastly, one more time, I just want to say I had so much fun. It was a great crowd. I was actually kind of surprised how it seemed pretty packed. Now, towards the end of the game, after the score kind of was getting out of hand, because the Packers more or less were dominating for most of the night. It was just Packers fans in the stands at the end, which was kind of cool. But one thing I will say, Packers fans always travel well. They're the greatest fans on earth in sports in general, and multiple times throughout the game, you could hear a "Go Pack Go" chant. I actually got to talk with a decent amount of Packers fans, and I mean, not that they know who I am or anything like that. But it was really fun to interact, and I love those type of interactions, which is why I always encourage at the end of every episode, hey, if you want to find me on social media, or if you want to give me a suggestion, or even just talk football just in general, please feel free to do so. I love this sport so much. I love Packers fans. I love all football fans, but Packers fans have my heart. You guys are awesome. So yeah, it was a fun time, great atmosphere. Totally would do it again. I'm actually hoping that I can go to another Packers game, maybe hopefully later this year. We'll see. But yeah, that's about it as far as this episode goes. I know that this is probably more the lengthy one, but that's only because we've had such a big break from football, and now that we have real football to look at, I just want to talk about it all day long. I could go on and on and on and on about it, but I'm not going to waste your time. I did want to just share those brief thoughts. Thank you so much for making Real Packers Talk a part of your day. Please feel free to like and subscribe. You can find this podcast anywhere on Spotify, Anchor, or YouTube. And yeah, that's going to be it from me today. As always, go Pack Go.